Good morning. Home again. Back where I was when I did this last. I did this last 8 days ago. And since then, we have been to Fiji. I'm going to talk about Fiji in just a moment because that was somewhere new for me. Ticked off a different place. Let's look at the sponsor. And it is a long-time sponsor, 1Password. Back again for the week just gone. This is 1Password's Extended Access Manager, which of course came from the Collide acquisition earlier on. 1Password Extended Access Manager is secure every sign-in for every app on every device. And that covers you. That is every single one. Secure sign-in for every app on every device. Modern security and IT teams need to make sure every identity, device, and application is secure. Only 1Password Extended Access Management, or XAM, checks every box. So I was talking to someone online the other day about 1Password. And they're like, I think they said, I've been using it for 7 years now. And then I did the maths. When did I start using 1Password? I think it's 13. This got me on a great, where are we? No, that's that one. 1Password. I can't remember, which ironically I can't remember, but that will take me to the blog post. The only secure password is the one you can't remember, 21st of March, 2011. So I remember actually because it was Christmas. So it would have been Christmas 2010. I started using a password manager, which was, of course, 1Password. And I went and I bought it after testing all of the other ones. There wasn't a lot of choice about password managers back then, and the two big players, 1Password, LastPass. I found 1Password was a better fit for what I did. Started giving them money, and years and years and years went by before we had any sort of commercial relationship, and now here we are. Christian's here. G'day, Christian. Mitch, g'day, Mitch. Greetings all. Evening for Christian. You're Denmark, weren't you, Christian? It's a very Danish name. It's at least, Scandinavia. We're Oslo. I'm in Oslo. I know. Must be getting cooler there now. I know it must be getting cooler because it's getting warmer here. We're 15 degrees Celsius at 7 a.m. in August. And by our calendar, we must be about three weeks and 1 day off spring, which is awesome. Which makes me wonder why we're going to go away again. Let's talk about travel. Because I did put in where's my list of things? I did put Fiji travel. So I have been to Fiji since I last did this video. Now, it's kind of funny actually because we were there and we were talking to some Americans from Philadelphia and they're like, we got such a long trip home. And I was saying in the show, I was like, it's really rare we go somewhere and we're the ones with the short trip and the other people are the ones with the long trip. But Fiji is actually pretty close for us in Australia. So we're around about 3.5, 4 hours, depending on which way you're going, from here to Nandi. So it's usually a single hop. We had to go to Sydney first just because Brisbane doesn't have as many flights. But I came back yesterday, one hop after the tiny little plane, which was a 30-minute ride from the resort to the main airport. But anyway, so my first trip to Fiji, it was the lasting memory, the lasting really good memory is just the level of friendliness is nuts. Now, I've traveled a lot. What am I up to? I've got this app. It's an app called Bean where you can track which countries you've been to. So we've all been using that. I want to ask me to pay stuff. You've visited 18% of the world. Now, how many countries is that? Countries? Visited. 35 countries. All right, cool. Been to 35 countries, lived in 4 of them. Haven't been to South America yet. I've got to go and do that. But looking at my list of other places that are very friendly, places like Thailand and Indonesia, Vanuatu. I think Australia's very friendly, but it's very familiar. But there's just a different level of ingratiating behavior there, which was just lovely. And it wasn't like in the formal way. So there's a lot of politeness when we go to, I'll give you 2 different examples. If you go to somewhere like a lot of Asia and you stay in a nice hotel, it's very ingratiating, very, very polite, but it's like, yes sir, no sir, etc. You go to the US, it's all sir and ma'am. But I feel it's a little bit in the same way as when we say mate, which can be, I love you, mate, or you're a dickhead, mate. It feels like that, where it's just it's like a preposition to whatever comes after that. But genuinely lovely there, and it's all they all remember your names. It's all very Troy and Charlotte and Al, the three of us went. That was super cool. There is a thing called Fiji time, which is like a watch that doesn't work. Put it that way. Which, for the most part, doesn't bother me when I'm on a holiday. But like coming back yesterday morning and almost missing a flight because Fiji time, when they're doing everything from picking us up to trying to figure out the bill. And I am normally, at least in my professional life and personal life actually, if I say I'm going to do something at 7 o'clock, I will be there ready at like 6:58 every time. If I'm there at 7:01, it's killing me. If I think I'm going to be there at 7:01, an hour beforehand, it's killing. I cannot stand not delivering on time. So that's a little bit difficult for me. Christian is Norway, very good. Stone Triangle Studios in the UK. So I get colder there as well. Anyway, so the rest of Fiji. What do we do? Laid around the pool a lot. Drank a bunch of wine, some Fiji beer. Drank Fiji kava, which is their kind of, let's call it a weird alcohol they make out of a root, which looks a little bit like muddy water. They really get into this. They're like, yeah, every day we just drink kava in the evenings, and it makes us a bit numb. I was like, okay. I don't think I had enough of it to get a bit numb. Maybe a bit relaxed, and that was it. But very, very pretty place. I only put a couple of photos on Twitter. To be honest, I kind of tuned out of it a little bit, which probably wasn't a bad idea given the sort of content that's on there at the moment. So anyway, we're back here for 4 days. Going to Sydney for a couple of days for, I think, something I'll probably be able to talk about at the time. There is a work thing. And then, as I mentioned earlier on, the plan for us at the moment is to head over to the US and Canada at the end of next month. I think probably the last week of next month, first couple of weeks of October. So we will certainly be around the Washington, D.C. area, the Philadelphia area, the Montreal area. I know it's not America, but it's close. So we're just locking in those things, and I've got to start booking some flights. Also, when did flights to America get so expensive? I've not been back to the US since 2019, but it always used to be cheaper to fly to the US than to fly to Europe for us here in Australia, largely because it's much, much closer. It's like one hop from here to, say, LA or San Francisco to the West Coast. And suddenly it is way, way, way more expensive than going to Europe. So something post-COVID, there's a term that pisses some people off. But you know what I mean. Something post-COVID has changed where now it's just super, super pricey. Anyway, we'll be over there. We'll definitely be on the West Coast in San Francisco as well. And if you are in either of those places and you were at a big tech company, or particularly anyone that we work with, please let me know and we'll try and swing by and say good day. So they are the plans coming up, and then there's more travel things. Stone Triangle Studio said, Troy, did you ever realise the password CUV6U4 !GU from the one password ad on the Pwn passwords page has actually been pwned 8 times? Is that on the... What's the context? Are they using that as an example of a good password? One password ad on the Pwn passwords page. Is there an ad there? Pwn passwords page. There's a link off to 1Password. Learn more at 1Password. I'm wondering where that is now. Maybe that is one of the ones in the page after you go there. Type a password and you'll see it. Oh, I should know how my thing works, shouldn't I? Type any password. Pwned. Oh, yeah. No, that's in the artwork. Yeah. That's not... Yeah, is it a 1Password ad? Kinda? Yeah, okay, let's say yes. Right, I see. Now, in their defense, you can't see the rest of the password. So, I don't know. Maybe there's 20 characters after that, and you're only seeing the first 8 or whatever it is. Okay, so, anyway, that was Fiji Travels. Now home, I have to unpack. I had to reorganise my hydroponics. when I got home. I've tweeted about this before. So we 3D printed, we being Al and I, 3D printed a hydroponics tower. And it was cool, and we're growing so much stuff. But it's getting so big, and then I needed to get a bigger drum. And then I got home and I realized the pump is now not pumping particularly well. So I put the bigger pump in, and the bigger pump is noisy. And I wonder if it gets a bunch of that green crap, which then falls, chlorophyll? I don't know, something from the plants. It's looking awesome, but it's starting to be more and more maintenance. However, it's very nice to go into your backyard and just have all of these herbs, and we're growing strawberries. Looks really cool. Strawberries and tomatoes. All right, business. Some weeks ago, I spoke about how much I lamented the problems I was having with these Microsoft Precision mice. Now this is, I think the full term is like the Microsoft Surface Precision mouse. It doesn't matter if you don't have a Microsoft Surface, it's just a wireless mouse. And it's an ergonomic wireless mouse. If I put it near my head, you can see it in focus. And I've been using these for a very long time, and they have mostly been absolutely fine, except for the fact that two of them, because I've got them at every machine in the house, something with the scroll wheel went completely kaput, so that you can be on a page that scrolls, and if your mouse is on focus on that page, the page just starts like having some sort of epileptic fit going up and down all over the place. So that was a problem that turned out to be an issue with the hardware and the mice, because it was two of them that were doing it out of the 4 mice we have on various machines here. And I think I spoke about this in the video, and I was like, why do people have so many shitty suggestions for when I ask how to fix it? There are suggestions like, oh, you should use Linux instead of Windows. Or what were the other ones? All these other things that you should go and do that seem completely just like weird things, like clean the ball on the mouse, the ball on the laser mouse. Anyway, a bunch of people said you should get Logitech MX Master 3S mice instead. And that annoyed me, because it was effectively like, instead of here's how to fix the problem that you have, go and spend more money on something else. So anyway, I went and spent more money on something else. I went and got, oh wow, that moves on its own. Oh, that's scrolling the screen. Went and got, let's just show you the box, because I've got one open, one unopened. Went and got 2 of these, the MX Master 3S, the Master Series by Logitech. And I actually really like it. I really like it. I think it actually feels nicer than the Microsoft one. So they're both connected at the moment. So I put them side by side here. They're very, very sort of similar in size. The Logitech, I'd say, is probably just a little bit larger. I quite like the wheel on the side. There's a little thumb wheel on the side here, which you can assign various actions to. So I have assigned it to zoom. So, you know, I end up zooming on, oh shit, that's not zooming anymore. That's now flicking between tabs. I had assigned it to zoom, and now it does something completely different. What if I'm in the focus of the web page? Nope, still scrolls tabs. At least I know how to fix it now. That's something. But it's, maybe it's even just a little bit lighter. I don't know. But it feels nice. I really like that metal wheel, which the Microsoft one has as well, but it's smaller. It's just something about this big one. So yeah, I'm actually really quite liking this. For the most part, it's got the same number of buttons and everything else on that little wheel on the side. There is a pressable thumb button just on the bottom here, if you see where my finger is. And you can assign various actions to that. And then you can assign gestures if you're pushing the button and then you move the mouse. So I've got to get a little bit used to that. Simon loves his Logi Master 3. But yeah, I think this is nice. I was a little bit worried that I've got, and this is really pedantic, I've got the light-colored Microsoft mouse and keyboard. And I was like, now if I have a dark-colored mouse, it won't all match. But it looks really, really neat on my dark-colored mouse mat. So now I wonder if I need a dark-colored keyboard. Charlotte did point out that I am starting to wear off some of the letters on this keyboard. The A and the S are pretty much gone. That's okay. I remember where those are. But it is showing the signs of wear, so maybe I am justifying. Does Logitech have like an equivalent keyboard? What about Logitech keyboards? Do they have a nice sort of ergonomic one? Because that is my bar now. Yes, so Simon says you need the Logi keyboard. Oh, okay, so Simon, and I appreciate the comments are probably about 10 seconds behind my voice. Do they have a nice keyboard? So my bar around keyboards, there we go, around all of these devices now is ergonomics is just super, super important because I spend so much time at the PC. And I mentioned, I think when I was talking about the old Microsoft one a while ago, when I was in probably my early 20s, I started, half a lifetime ago, I started getting RSI in my right hand because I was spending so much time at the keyboard. They do have ergo keys. And one of the best things I did was to go out, and this was after seeing a physio, go out and get ergonomic keyboard, mouse, and obviously do the right thing with chairs and everything else. This is why I've spent quite a bit of money on things like Herman Miller chairs that I sit in for a long, long, long time. And it's made a really big difference. It's a massive difference. I have had 1 or 2 RSI-related issues since, but I got like another 20 years, another 2 decades of working hand before I had any more issues, and they're all very manageable at the moment. Ergo K860. Looks really plasticky. Maybe it'll be fine. It's the same layout though. You know, it's that same, pretty much the same layout. I don't like the palm pads. I've never been able to get in the pads in front of the keyboards. But the rest of this actually, can you run it without the palm pad? Sure you can. The rest of it looks pretty nice. Okay. Maybe I'll look at that and just go all in on Logitech. Simon, I have the MX Mechanical Mini. What does that look like? MX Mechanical. Okay, so it's not ergonomic. Yeah, so that's... it looks sweet, don't get me wrong, but... Geez, some of these are expensive. Lightspeed Wireless RGB Mechanical Gaming, $429. Crikey. Wow. That is a very pricey keyboard. Oh, they've got a lot of keyboards here. How much can you spend on a keyboard now? What if we sort by price? It's a terrible thing to do, but you end up going, okay, well, like, what's your best keyboard? I'm going to get a lot of keystrokes on this thing, and as soon as there's a lot of, man, those gaming keyboards are expensive. Are they just like somehow lower latency or something? Anyway, the keyboard I was just looking at seems to be the one for ergonomics. It's basically the only ergonomic keyboard as far as I can see, unless we go way down the price range. And I do like them. I do actually like them being split like this. I don't touch type as well as I should, but I do find this kind of handy. Now, I did see Stone Triangle Studios asked a question, why on HOBP does it say one of my dad's emails was in a 2008, but that the email wasn't even made until 2010? Well, you got to remember, an email address, as far as we're concerned on the Have I Been Pwned side, is just a string that adheres to a pattern. Yeah, it's John at acme.com or whatever it might be. It's got some text, it's got an @ symbol, it's got some more text, a dot and some other text, and then other rules which we apply on top of that. But for the most part, that's it. So the simple answer to your question is, if someone entered that string into a website somewhere and stored it in the database, which is what happens when you register, even if you don't then go through and prove that you control the address, because a lot of websites either don't do that or they retain the addresses afterwards if you don't go through and verify control. So it just sounds like someone has entered that address, and I'm not going to ask you for the address, but you can probably figure it out now based on this. Go and have a look at what the service is that appears breached against, and that website probably allowed someone to enter it, which again is like what you do at registration, and stored it in the database. And that's it. We can't go through and validate whether or not an address actually exists or not, particularly when we're doing it at very large scale, which is the last thing we'll talk about today, at very large scale. JF, returned my MX Meter 3S for the same reason. Scroll wheel would just stop until I opened the Logi Plus app. Went back to my MX3, wondering if the result was MX3 having the bolt receiver instead. Don't know, but based on several hours of usage so far, because I unwrapped this when I got home yesterday, it seems good. So I think we'll stick with this. We'll hand the old mice off, and yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, so far So happy. ShoeZone. Let's talk about ShoeZone. There was a ShoeZone data breach. What happened in ShoeZone? This was one of those while I'm on holidays. Sort of tough. I do data breaches while I'm on holidays sometimes because the breaches don't stop. ShoeZone had over 100,000 orders breached. Now, okay, I remember this one now. So it was a little bit odd because it looked like someone had been able to scrape an exposed endpoint with a bunch of JSON on it. So there were like 100-something thousand individual JSON files that had order details in there. Those order details included name, address, and partial credit card data, the card type and the last 4 digits. 93% were already in Have I Been Pwned. Now, if I have a look at the article that was here, there was press about it, which always makes it easier for me to load the data, very fun load. The High Volume Retailer is a UK service, or UK retailer. High Volume Retailer reported it was the subject of a cyber incident, which has resulted in unauthorized access to certain online systems and data. We call that a data breach. The company's website remains operational. Now, I did recall, though, somewhere here in the article, it was down for a bit. Who's Edison? Edison. There's an interesting comment down here. Head of Professional Services at Closed Door Security. ShoeZone is one of the UK's largest footwear retailers, so the attack will cause serious concerns for many of its customers, especially if their data has been stolen, said Cassius Edison, Head of Professional Services at Closed Door Security. Been spending a bunch of time with lawyers recently working on processes within Have I Been Pwned to try and be as privacy-centric and tick all the boxes we can and not get sued. And I did ask the question the other day. These are well-renowned global cyber lawyers. And I said, is stolen the right word? Because normally if you, let's say someone steals my Microsoft mouse. I don't have the mouse after they steal it. It feels a little bit like when the recording industry was doing the whole you wouldn't steal a car thing about pirating movies. And people were like, yeah, but if someone steals my car, I don't have my car anymore. If they steal, copy the movie, I still have the movie. There's 2 of them. We just miss royalties, which may not have been. Anyway, you all know the argument. So I was asking the question, is stolen the right word for a data breach? And they're very much like, well, it could be, maybe not. I don't think it's the right word. It's unauthorized access, but I don't think it's the right word. Edison also noted, although ShoeZone said it does not expect to be materially impacted, we've regularly seen things can change very quickly in breach forensics, so it might be some time before we know the full extent of the incident. And down the end, Edison, who was Edison? Cassius Edison. Edison said, with cybercrime being such a major threat to business today, preparation for attacks is essential. They run a cybersecurity company, so I guess that's a reasonable comment. What is interesting about this is the partial card data. Now, I would really like someone who's not me to do some research on what can you do today in 2024 with partial card data. So again, the partial card data exposed here was the card type and the last 4 digits. Now, I say what can you do today because in the past, that was often used as part of identity verification. So you'd be trying to prove your identity to an organization and they'd say, okay, look, we just need to make sure you are who you say you are. What are the last 4 digits of your card? And we've seen cases in the past. Matt Honan's Epic hacking is a good example. The Wired Journal, this must have been from like 2012, it was a long time ago. But part of the way folks got into his things, don't quote me on this, go and read the article, but was around the effect of someone got into, let's say, his Amazon account, and on the Amazon account, they were able to find the last 4 digits of his card. And then they managed to get into his Apple account by social engineering the Apple support rep. And one of the questions was, what's the last 4 digits of your card? I'd love to see how workable that still is today, because I think that's really key when we see data breaches like this, because the messaging is usually, don't worry, your credit cards are safe, or don't worry, your card data hasn't been, or something which might be technically correct insofar as the card can't be charged, but it misses the fact that there is value in the partial card data and consequently risk posed to the individuals. I think that's the bit that's missing. So I'd love to see something in 2024. Stone Triangle says, I've shopped at Shoe Zone before, but never gave email, but card and address. How am I supposed to know if I'm in it? Well, if only there was a website where you could put your address in and check if you're in a data breach. I suspect if you've gone in there and provided your credit card, you're not in there. This appears to be online orders. Also, because it was scraped, it looks like it was enumerated, which means that whoever did this probably needed to have an email address first to throw at the service, unless they've just gone +1 to an ID or something. So yeah, you might not have been in there. JF says, Herman Miller chair was my best office investment. Yeah, so when I originally wrote a blog post about, what was it? Building Ultimate Home Office. I was still in Sydney. Building Ultimate Home. This must have been a decade ago. Wow, 2009. It was well over a decade ago. 15 years ago. When I was in not just a very different location, but also a very different financial position. And spending the money on a Herman Miller chair was a really big thing. But I did it because I was spending so much time sitting there. And so if that was 2009, that was maybe like 6 years after I was having RSI-related problems. So I spent the money. I got more than a decade out of that chair until we got to the point here where refurbishing the house. And I had more access to money, quite frankly. So I got the one I'm sitting in now and the one that's just over my left shoulder there, because Charlotte and I often sit here together. And then we actually refurbished the original one and gave it to our son, Ari. So he uses it. So that's now a decade and a half old, and we spent, I think, a couple of $100 to replace some foam and things like that. And yeah, they're just epic, epic chairs. Stone Triangle's asking about an email again. I don't know. I know you've mentioned it. I'm backlogged. Let me see what I can find. I've come now that I'm home and I have the weekend. I can use my weekend to try and get through some of this. Now, speaking of Bang Bros, subtle transition. If you're unfamiliar with the term, wait till you get home to Google it. But, and the only reason I'm mentioning it here is I did tweet about it earlier on the week, and I looked at it this morning and I was like, I don't think I need to put Bang Bros as like a headline in my weekly update. But I have seen it here on the cybernews.com website in the context of the Shoe Zone breach I was just talking about. Apparently, this is a pornography website. I don't know. Miami-based Bang Bros, a well-known adult film studio and platform, has exposed private user information that includes IPs, usernames, locations, feedback messages, and model performance statistics. Cybernews researchers found a large, unsecured online database containing 12 million records. Now, I recall when I tweeted about this, I have a feeling I was at the airport just going away, so I didn't take it too seriously, but I tweeted about it and I said, oh, this is going to be uncomfortable for some people because it's pornography. Now, a bunch of people then like, well, we should stop stigmatizing pornography. You know, it's like, I feel like that is a separate discussion to the fact that someone's association to certain websites has a higher degree of potential adverse outcome than other websites. And a perfect example, if your boss, significant other, children find out that you have a Dropbox account, how much do they care? If they find out that you have a Bang Bros account from your IP address with feedback messages and they see all of that, how much do you care? This is different in the same way as health, religion, politics, sexuality are much more sensitive classes of data. And if this turns up and it goes and have I been pwned, it will be flagged as sensitive, just like every other porn site. It's got nothing to do with the discussion about whether we should destigmatize porn or outlaw porn or whatever the view is. The point is the association is the thing that is sensitive, and many people would feel awkward with the association, use a VPN and a throwaway email address if you're going to go and use legal resources like this. Okay, glad we got that out of the way. Right, last thing, and this is the main thing that that went in yesterday, and unfortunately has not killed my inbox to the extent I thought it would. Breached then not breached again, the not SOC radar breach. 3 breaches in the one title. Let me just find some headline reporting on this, and then we can talk about their position on this. If I just search for SOC radar data breach, which I don't really think is the right term. Okay, hack read, 4 days ago. A hacker known as USDOD claims to have scraped 332 million email addresses from socradar.io, which were later dumped online by another threat actor, Dominatrix. Start your day. Yes, I would like to. Yeah, it looks like you're awake. Thanks, Siri. This dump raises a significant security concern as socradar.io is a prominent threat intelligence platform. Now, see, it then goes on and says, this incident, which is not in italics, bold, and uppercase, the whole trilogy of emphasis, not a data breach. So there's just like hundreds of millions of records floating around, but it's not a data breach. Took place in July 2024. The announcement on cybercrime and hacker platform, popular hacking website, detailed that USDOD, known for previous high-profile breaches, was responsible for scraping socradar.io. Now, multiple issues here. The data that was published, posted to a popular hacking forum. This person says, today I've uploaded a SOC radar database for you to download. Thank you for reading and enjoy, smiley face. Just the terminology. I have uploaded a SOC radar database. And then it says in July 2024, USDOD scraped 332 million email addresses, parsed from stealer logs and combo list. I have purchased the data to share with you all today. Now, this was just email addresses. That was published. I'll come back to the caveat there. Of the 332, I found, I think, 282 million unique, so I assume there's some duplication there, legitimate addresses. Now, but by legitimate, we've got a regex, which chucks a bunch of junk out, but it also looks for things like, is the TLD valid? And that's a great way of weeding out invalid databases. If it's a .fufu TLD, which I hope doesn't exist, or something like that, that is not considered a valid email address. So very often you see these headline numbers and the actual number is something beneath that. So I guess on that basis, we had, what was that, 12, 13, 14% or something of email addresses that were in there were either duplicate or not valid. Now, we'll come back to the SOC radar piece in a moment, but I grabbed those email addresses and I did a quick check against have I been pwned. 81%, I think, of the addresses, what did I say on Twitter, were already on there. And that's kind of significant because it means that 19% of them, let's get those figures right, was 81%. 19% of them, so let's say for the sake of simplicity, that's like 55 million email addresses or something. 55 million of those addresses had never been seen and have I been pwned before. And that is a really, really substantial number. And I'm just looking at, all our processes ran last night. That was good. Because there is a bit of, when things get that large, it's a little bit manual. Anyway, so 50-something million email addresses not seen before. So in terms of new content, this was not just recycled things that had already been seen in there, which is one of the great sort of, I guess, measures by which I decide whether something should go into have I been pwned. Now, this was allegedly data which was from stealer logs. So stealer logs normally has the name of the website, the username, which is frequently the email address, and the password, all dumped in a log somewhere. And then per previous data breach I've loaded into have I been pwned, the 2 Telegram ones, not Telegram the service itself, but stealer logs posted to Telegram channels. They get posted into these public forums and then people go and aggregate them. Now, inevitably, one of the services that SOC Radar has is they go and look at these Telegram channels and they do some degree of reporting on it. Now, I'm just caveating the way I'm saying that because what's being reported in the breach here is not consistent with SOC Radar's position on it. I'm going to read their position in a moment. So this post on the hacking forum here says, that it scraped this data from SOCRadar.io. Now, SOCRadar.io, I reached out to because I'm just very conscious that it is too easy for this to read like a data breach of their services. And what was becoming evident is that they have services that can either index or point people or raise awareness, like Have I Been Pwned does, to the exposure of people in data breaches. And I just wanted to get a clear story. So fortunately, they published a piece on this. In fact, they'd published it, I think, by the time I reached out to them. SOCRadar's response to the US DoD's claim of scraping 330 million emails. What exactly happened in this incident? I'm just going to read their wording here. The investigation revealed that SOCRadar's internal systems were not breached. The threat actor acquired a license from SOCRadar under a legitimate company name, providing access to the platform similar to any other customer. With this account, the actor could search for well-known domain names, collect Telegram channel names, and crawl these channels to harvest email addresses. It is important to note that no technical vulnerabilities in the SOCRadar platform were exploited. The actor merely utilised functions inherent in the platform's standard offerings, designed to gather information from publicly available sources. This incident highlights a significant issue in information ethics and security, distinguishing between legitimate use and potential misuse. I found that last sentence really interesting. And I will say that the interaction I had with them was awesome. I communicated with, let's just say, with the right person there, someone senior enough, and they were fantastic. I'll just read this sentence again and then comment on that. This incident highlights a significant issue in information ethics and security, distinguishing between legitimate use and potential misuse. Now, I kind of feel reading that it's almost a bit of reflection for them in terms of saying we need to consider the ethics of making information like this available and its potential misuse. Because I guess their position is the data was not scraped from our service. Someone signed up to our service, found all the Telegram channels, and then scraped the data out of them. Now, misattribution on behalf of a threat actor is an everyday thing. Like, this happens all the time. And I'm sure that this got much more attention and much more press because they put the word SOCRadar in there than if they had just gone, oh, it's just another list of scraped stuff from Telegram, which is still impactful. But it's a bit different when you've got a company name in there. And they're, best of my knowledge, a fairly sizable organisation growing very quickly too. Yeah, good on them. But I can see why that attribution was put in there, but it does appear to be a bit misleading based on their analysis. However, it does still raise that question to their own sentence here about the potential misuse of data like this. Should it be possible for a malicious party to come and sign up for an account that then gets access to hundreds of millions of email address and password pairs? Now, in Have I Been Pwned, I flagged this just as email addresses because that's what's circulating. But if they steal the logs, well, then they will have the passwords in there as well. So look, I'm not sure if that's something that they're going to give a little bit more thought to. This, I agree with them. This certainly does not sound like a technical vulnerability in their system. I'm sure their customer data is safe. I have no doubt about that. I think it just raises that question of, is that the right amount of information to make available to a third party that can be a malicious actor? And this is exactly the same thing I have to think about all the time with Have I Been Pwned. How do I make the right information available to the right people? And I've erred so far on the side of caution that people often get pissed off at me because they're like, why won't you tell me the data that was in those stealer logs? I want to see what the passwords were or the websites was in there. And I make the decision that, no, look, that's just not information I'm going to provide because of the potential for things like this to happen. So I appreciate that that their intentions are very good, and I'm sure that data is used in really productive ways for many organisations. But I think that given they're the ones that have asked the question here or highlighted the issue of the ethics and the potential misuse, I assume that's something that they're reflecting on at the moment. And now I'm not saying that in terms of they should do things differently, but this is the risk that you create when you make data like that available. Okay, let's look at the comments here. Stone Triangles, just going to abbreviate you now. Stone Triangle, did SocRadar just get breached, or does that have nothing to do with the tweet you made about loading data aggregated breach and have a pwn? Okay, cool. So I think I've answered the bit about did they get breached. So no, by any reasonable definition, they did not get breached. It does sound like they were the vector by which previously breached data was located and then re-breached. I think re-breached is okay. Someone had malware, a lot of people had malware on their machines. Their credentials got stolen. They went into stealer logs. So let's call that the first breach. They then got published to Telegram channels. So maybe we call that the second breach. Someone then aggregated all of that with the help of SocRadar's services that were not intended to do bad things, and then republished it all to a popular hacking forum. Let's call that the third breach. So I feel like it's been like a triple breach here, which is, yeah, a little bit worrying. Now, you've also asked about, does it have anything to do with the tweet you made about loading data aggregated breaches? So when I was first looking at this incident, and I had no idea other than what was in the headlines, which were implying the data came from SocRadar, I put out a poll. This was 4 days ago. Now, the poll was, and in fact, I was talking to someone, I forget who it was, I was chatting to someone on one of the platforms, and they were sort of saying, you know, look, this isn't really a breach, or this isn't really something that people need to know about. And I was like, I actually think that people would want to know about this. So the poll tweet says, if you're in a breach and your data is aggregated by a third party, then they have a breach that discloses your data again. Would you want to know? Should this constitute a notifiable breach? Now, I was thinking about the SocRadar incident, and as I said, this is not a breach of their service. It's fair to say the data itself has been breached, but it looks like we've had the discussion. So it doesn't really matter, though, in the context of this tweet, because the context is still relevant. The data has been breached and then somehow it gets bundled up and then breached again. You know, do you want to know about the second incident? 89.4% of people said yes. I'd want to know. 10.6% of people said no, it's not relevant. And that is an overwhelmingly strong affirmative response, 677 votes. There is no ambiguity in terms of what people want here. And I did expect to get up this morning and see some angry people like, why are you letting me know about this if you can't show me all that? Yeah, or whatever. And no angry tweets, emails, anything like that. So yes, that's what it was related to. And I think that the way I phrase that is relevant still, now that we know more, at least from SocRadar's reports, about how it happened. James says, thanks for help last week, Troy Hunt. I actually had a pwned email address in my domain that I never created. As best I can tell, someone else has accidentally typed my domain instead of theirs, accidentally or deliberately. Like it could have been either. And we sort of said this earlier on in this week's podcast. It's like an email address is a string. Anyone can enter a string into an email address field. James goes on, the bad part is, since they didn't do email verification, the other person might not know their name and address was pwned. Well, the thing is, and this maybe you came in a little bit after this, but I said earlier on, even if services do verification, think about the workflow that happens. Like you go to a website, there's a registration page, you put in an email address and what any other data there is, it goes into the database, it sits in the database, it generates some sort of a token. If there's verification done of control of the email address, and an email gets sent with the token in it, and then if you click the link, you go to the website and it confirms and it flags the record as now being active. If you don't click the link and you don't go there, it usually still sits there. Now in Have I Been Pwned, for example, when you use that notification service, I forget how long it is. I think it's like a week or something. If you haven't clicked the verification link after we send you the verification email, we delete the email. Get rid of it. And that's easy to do. Delete from users where registered date is 1 week or more before today and is active is false. Like it's really, really, really simple to do. But in my experience, most websites don't do that. So that's why I think. Ben Hop says, hey Troy, have you considered making Have I Been Pwned API keys available via Azure Marketplace or AWS Marketplace? No, I haven't. I think that would be an absolute nightmare. And I'll explain why after I read your next message. I recall you mentioning a while back that businesses wanting to buy HIBP API keys with a purchase order was a pain, resulting in tickets and manual work for you. Yes, you're right, it is. Let's talk about this. There have been lots of suggestions about alternate ways outside of Stripe to purchase keys. The problem is, like, if we go through the workflow of how this whole thing works, you go to the Have I Been Pwned website, you say you want to purchase, you click a link, you go to a checkout session on Stripe, you put in a credit card. It's easy. Everyone's got credit cards, right? Says me in my naivety. You purchase the thing. Stripe then uses webhooks to call back to Have I Been Pwned and tell Have I Been Pwned the purchase has been made. I think Have I Been Pwned sends an email and then flags the key as active, has an identifier in there to link back to Stripe, because you need to be able to go back later and retrieve things like your invoices, for example. You need to be able to go back to Stripe and upgrade your plans and do that sort of thing. And each one of those has webhook events that come back to Have I Been Pwned to do things like upgrade the size of your API key. So Stripe becomes a hub for everything from obviously the payment itself, through to the selection of the plan size, through to the cancellation of the plan, through to updating things like the email address in the account. So if there's to be another payment gateway, then that payment gateway now has to replicate all of that stuff, or it has to get pushed back to Have I Been Pwned, which I really, really don't want to do in terms of things like changing subscription sizes, because that's all code that already exists there in Stripe and works lovely in Stripe, very easily. Things like upsells from monthly to annual plans. Things like changing your plan. You can just go in there and all the products, as I call them in Stripe, are already published. It's all built into that portal. So to go and replicate that even one more time is a major, major piece of work. And we've got to think about the ROI on that. And the return isn't just a monetary return as well. Like, how many more people can we reach? How many people can do useful things with the platform? And really, we're just looking at the gap between those who can either put in a credit card, or part of the way to solve this is they go to a reseller. So Software House International, for example, is probably our biggest reseller by a long way. So they can go to SHI, and then SHI will mark the price up because they have to make money. We don't give resellers discounts. Frankly, I hate the whole reseller model, but it feels like they're a necessary evil. So if we talk about marketplaces such as Amazon or AWS, that will make some people happy. But then we've got to build all of that functionality into that environment. And then there'll be all the other people who want to play with crypto who are unhappy because now there's not a way to pay with crypto. And then there's all the people who want to pay with PayPal. The enormous frustration I have is of all the different payment mechanisms that we have available, crypto, PayPal, bank transfer, walking over with an envelope of cash, sending a check in the mail, credit card. Like, credit card is the most universally accepted form of payment anywhere, not just online, but in person as well. It's very rare these days you go somewhere in person where you can't pay something with a credit card. Fiji, riding horses on the beaches, exception. Had to go to an ATM. Anyway, tangential story. It's extremely annoying that Stripe has a partial solution where if you're American, which we are not, you need to have an American entity, you can have virtual bank account details. So you can, in that case, do EFT payments. We can't do that in Australia. And it bugs the hell out of me. And I'm sure it's related to how heavily regulated the finance industry is and everything else. But we cannot get virtual bank accounts short of creating an entire other US-based entity, and they do have a model for that as well. But now we've got to have this whole US entity, which then has another company and another set of tax returns and responsibilities and everything else, in order to do something that everyone should be able to do, but because some companies have such stringent security, or rather stringent procurement processes, they just make life freaking hard. So yeah, look, I mean, it's a reasonable suggestion. I get what you're saying. It just adds so much more complexity to something which really we barely think about at the moment. And in fact, if I look at where we spend the most amount of time at the moment on tickets, it's things like people saying, can you please give me a quote? Now, we can automate that as well. It's on my backlog. I can create a page where you go in and you fill your details and it automatically generates a quote in Stripe. It's a great API ecosystem and provides a quote. Frankly, what I would much rather see and what would solve this problem 90% of the time is to be able to make EFT payments as an Australian organisation, or receive EFT payments as an Australian organisation using Stripe. If you're from Stripe and you're listening to this, make it happen, for God's sake. We have banks in Australia, many banks. We've been doing this for a long time. I don't understand why it's so hard. And it does my head in, and it is that tiny percentage of our customers that is causing that massive percentage of our support overhead, just because we can't take payments by any method other than card. So thanks, Ben. If you can solve that problem for me, mate, I'll be really happy. Stone Triangle says, oh, Troy, do you know about the scam where scammers get your password from previous breaches and so they installed malware and have videos of victims watching adult content? Yep, been around forever. And it generally goes, hey, I've installed malware on your machine. I know your password is blah. They repeat something that you recognize, which creates credibility on behalf of the scammer, creates fear in the victim, because then they go on and they say, and we have caught you masturbating whilst watching pornography, and we have videos of it. And a whole bunch of people are like, well, yeah, I do masturbate and watch pornography in front of my computer, like a significant portion of them. And then they're like, and that is my password, and it socially engineers them into paying the money. If you are one of these people who've received this email, delete it. They're all junk. None of this. I was going to say none of this is true. Maybe the bit about what you do in front of your PC may be true. I don't know. It's not my business. But the bit about them having caught it on video, not true. Delete the email. James, come in late. Working on a fun automation home project and didn't see you live. And I am like a day late as well because of travel. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. I do have a bunch of work I need to go and catch up on. So let me go and do that, and I'll try and come to you. I can't come to you Friday. I'm in Sydney on Friday. Saturday, we'll do this again in a week from now. Cheers, folks.